My bitchy wife's disgusting affair and her Brenda's cousin Mark. Lies led to my brutal revenge that left her with absolutely nothing. Hey Reddit, throw away for obvious reasons. I'm reeling right now, barely sleeping, barely eating. My life feels like it just imploded, and I'm honestly not sure where to go from here, but I need to get this out. I've been married to Sarah for 12 years, together for 15. We built a life, a beautiful home, thought we had everything. Our kids are grown, just about to head off to college, so it was supposed to be our time again. We'd always been solid, or so I thought. She's always been a bit high maintenance, let's say, likes nice things, expects a certain lifestyle, but I always worked my ass off to provide it, and she always seemed to appreciate it, even if her appreciation sometimes felt a little conditional. Lately, though, things have been different. Over the last 6 months, she became incredibly secretive with her phone, always had it face down, took calls in another room, almost aggressively so. She started working late, more often. Even though she's a freelance graphic designer and usually sets her own hours, working from home. Little things, you know? Like she'd suddenly be too tired for intimacy, but then I'd hear her laughing loudly on a call with her friend, Brenda, late into the night. Brenda lives 3 states away, so those calls were always weirdly intense, lasting for hours. I brushed it off, told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe Brenda was going through something and Sarah was being a good friend. My gut, though, was screaming at me. It felt like I was living with a stranger. She was bitchy, dismissive, always on edge, and any question about her day was met with an eye roll or a snappy comment about me being too clingy or suffocating. I remember one time I just asked her what she had for lunch, trying to make conversation, and she practically bit my head off, saying, "Does it even matter, David? Can't I just have a moment to myself without a full interrogation?" It stung, man. It really stung. The woman I married, my partner in everything, was gone, replaced by this cold, distant, irritable stranger. Then came the actual discovery, and it wasn't some grand detective work, just pure, dumb luck that felt like a cosmic punch to the gut. She had been particularly difficult that week, constantly nitpicking everything I did, from how I loaded the dishwasher to the way I breathed. She said she was going to a client dinner that would run late, claiming it was a huge potential contract. Sounded plausible enough, even though the whole dinner thing for a graphic designer felt a little off. But I let it go. Around 10 p.m., she called me, slurring a bit, saying the dinner was a success and she was heading home, but she'd had a few drinks and was going to take a cab. I told her to be careful, and she just grunted and hung up. Fast forward to the next morning. She was still asleep, smelling faintly of cheap cologne, not her usual perfume. I went to make coffee, and that's when I saw it. Her phone, usually glued to her hand, was on the kitchen counter, face up, vibrating with notifications. I didn't mean to look, honestly, but the screen flashed a preview of a text message. It was from a contact named Brenda's cousin Mark. The message read, "Last night was incredible. You're worth every risk, my beautiful Sarah. Can't wait for round 2. Zoxo." My stomach dropped into my shoes. Brenda's cousin Mark? Who the hell was Brenda's cousin Mark? And incredible? Worth every risk. The cologne smell suddenly clicked into place, the client dinner story crumbling in my mind like a dry biscuit. My hands started to shake, and I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. It couldn't be. Not my Sarah. Not after all these years. But the evidence was staring me in the face, a brutal, undeniable shard of truth. I didn't even have to open the message to know. The implication was clear, sickeningly so. My entire world tilted on its axis. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My vision blurred, and a ringing started in my ears. I just stood there, staring at the phone, the words seared into my brain. Brenda's cousin Mark. My beautiful Sarah. Zoxo. It was like a bomb had gone off, and the shrapnel was tearing through my chest. All those late nights, the client dinners, the sudden aversion to my touch, the secret phone calls, it all slammed into me with the force of a tidal wave. It wasn't paranoia, it was brutal, ugly truth. A primal scream built in my throat, but I couldn't let it out. Not yet. She was still asleep. I fought the urge to smash her phone, to throw it against the wall, to shatter every illusion I'd ever held about her. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely pick up the coffee pot. I managed to make myself a cup, though the mug rattled against the saucer. The coffee tasted like ash. I paced the kitchen, my mind racing a million miles an hour, replaying every moment of the last 6 months, scrutinizing every casual remark, every subtle shift. She'd been lying to me, looking me in the eye, telling me she loved me, all while she was with this Mark. When she finally came sauntering into the kitchen an hour later, yawning and stretching like she hadn't a care in the world, my blood ran cold. She barely glanced at me, heading straight for the fridge. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, completely oblivious or pretending to be. "Coffee ready?" Her voice, usually so familiar, now sounded like nails on a chalkboard. I couldn't look at her without seeing him, without seeing the betrayal etched all over her. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the tremor in my hands. "Sarah," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. She turned, a slight frown on her face. "What is it, David? You look like you've seen a ghost." Oh, I had. The ghost of our marriage. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The words tumbled out, ragged and choked with emotion. "Who is Brenda's cousin Mark, Sarah?" Her face went from sleepy indifference to absolute panic in a split second. Her eyes darted to her phone, still sitting innocently on the counter. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, like a fish out of water. "Brenda's, what? What are you talking about?" She stammered, trying to sound nonchalant, but her voice was a full octave higher than usual. "Don't you dare lie to me, Sarah," I yelled, the anger finally breaking through the shock. My voice cracked. "I saw the message. Last night was incredible. You're worth every risk, my beautiful Sarah. Can't wait for round 2. Zoxo, explain that." She turned pale, visibly shrinking. Her initial reaction was, of course, denial. It's just a joke, David. Brenda's cousin, he's a bit of a jokester. We were all out at the client dinner, and he was just being silly. You know how Brenda's family is, always so boisterous." She even managed a pathetic, forced laugh. It was so transparent, so insulting. "A joke?" I spat, taking a step closer, my hands clenched into fists. "And the cologne? And the client dinners that kept you out until all hours? And the sudden aversion to me touching you? Is that all a joke too, Sarah? Was our entire marriage a joke to you?" Then the bitchiness came out, raw and unapologetic. Her face hardened, and her eyes, once full of fear, now blazed with a defensive fury. "You went through my phone. Are you serious, David? That's a complete invasion of privacy. How could you? And for what? Some stupid text message out of context? You're being completely ridiculous. Always so jealous, always so insecure." She even started tearing up, trying to play the victim, which only fueled my rage further. She was good, I'll give her that. A master manipulator. My head spun. The audacity, the absolute gall. It was unbelievable. Hey, if you're finding this story gripping, do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. The tears, the indignation, the deflection, it was all a carefully constructed wall, meant to make me doubt myself. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. The pieces fit too perfectly. The years of subtle put-downs, the emotional distance, the constant complaints about me. It was all part of a pattern I was only now seeing clearly. She wasn't just a cheater. She was a master of emotional manipulation, and I had been her naive puppet for far too long. "Don't you dare try to turn this on me, Sarah," I roared, my voice raw. "You are not the victim here. You've been lying to me for months, probably longer. You've been sleeping with another man while I've been working my ass off to provide for us, while I've been trying to keep our family together. You think I'm insecure because I expect fidelity from my wife of 12 years. Her act crumbled again. The tears dried up, replaced by a cold, hard stare. "Fine," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "So what if I was? What's it to you? You've been so boring lately, David. So predictable. Always the same routine, the same tired sex, the same questions. I needed something more. Someone who makes me feel alive again. You just stop trying." The words hit me like physical blows. Boring? Predictable? I stopped trying. I felt an ice-cold rage spread through me, numbing the pain for a moment. I dedicated my life to us, Sarah. I worked 2 jobs to send our kids to good schools, to make sure you had the lifestyle you demanded. I listened to your endless complaints. I supported your freelance career. I celebrated your minor successes like they were major breakthroughs. And this is my reward? You go out and screw some Brenda's cousin Mark because I'm not exciting enough? She just shrugged, a look of utter indifference on her face. Things change, David. People change. Maybe we just grew apart. It happens. You're just being dramatic. My mind raced, trying to process this new level of callousness. It wasn't just betrayal, it was utter contempt. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was a stranger. A cruel, selfish stranger. The emotional impact was an avalanche. First, the shock, a jolt of pure disbelief that left me hollow. Then came the anger, a furious, burning sensation that threatened to consume me. It pulsed through my veins, making my hands tremble, my jaw ache. I wanted to smash things, to scream until my throat was raw, to inflict a fraction of the pain she had just so casually dished out. But beneath the anger, a profound, crushing sadness began to set in. It was a grief, really, for the loss of a future I had so carefully constructed in my mind, for the demolition of a partnership I thought was unbreakable. I walked out of the kitchen, unable to stand her presence another second. I stumbled into the living room, collapsing onto the sofa, my head in my hands. The silence of the house, usually a comfort, now felt oppressive, mocking. Every object, every photograph, every corner of our home suddenly felt tainted, imbued with her lies and his presence. The memories, once cherished, were now poisoned, replaying in my mind with a sinister undertone. Was she thinking of him when we went on that anniversary trip? Was she texting him under the table at family dinners? The thought made me want to vomit. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt like a fool, an absolute, naive idiot who had been played for a puppet. The humiliation was immense, searing. Not just the humiliation of being cheated on, but of being so thoroughly duped, so easily dismissed. All those times I'd felt a pang of doubt, a fleeting suspicion, I'd pushed it down, attributing it to my own insecurities, to my own flaws. She'd made me believe I was the problem, when she was the rotten core. The weight of it all was suffocating. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, barely moving, barely breathing, just existing in a purgatory of pain and disbelief. The future, once a clear path, was now a chaotic, terrifying void. I couldn't imagine facing her again, couldn't imagine staying in the same house, couldn't imagine a single moment of my life that wasn't overshadowed by this brutal truth. The next few days were a blur of raw emotion. I stayed in the guest room, avoiding her as much as possible. When we did cross paths, the air was thick with resentment and an almost unbearable tension. She tried to act normal, almost as if she expected me to just get over it. But her attempts were pathetic and transparent. She even tried to bake my favorite cookies, setting them on the counter with a sheepish smile. I just walked past them, the smell making me want to gag. She had the audacity to ask, "Aren't you hungry, David? I made them just for you." I just looked at her, my eyes full of disgust, and she finally dropped the act. During this time, I barely slept. My mind raced, trying to find a solution, a way forward that didn't involve completely unraveling. I considered every option: therapy, separation, divorce. The thought of divorce was terrifying. Not just the practicalities, splitting assets, the house, but the emotional finality of it. This was my life, my family, crumbling before my eyes. But then I'd think of Brenda's cousin Mark and her chilling indifference, and I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend. I couldn't forgive. My trust was obliterated, not just cracked, but shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The sadness slowly began to morph into something else, something harder, colder. It was a steeling of my resolve, a quiet determination that she would not get away with this unscathed. The image of her casual shrug, her dismissive "things change," played on a loop in my head. She wanted out. She wanted to feel alive. Fine, but she wouldn't get it on her terms, not after what she'd done. My emotional journey, which started in shock and anger, passed through profound grief, and was now settling on a brutal, unwavering conviction. She had made her bed, and I was going to make sure she slept in it, alone and very, very uncomfortably. I was done being the weak, predictable husband she so easily discarded. A shift was happening within me, a fundamental change in my perception of her and of myself. The pain was still there, but it was now fueling a different kind of fire. This wasn't just about moving on. It was about ensuring she understood the cost of her betrayal. My decision solidified after a particularly vile exchange. She had the nerve to suggest we talk it out over dinner, like this was just a minor marital spat. When I refused, she got indignant, saying, "Honestly, David, you're so dramatic. People have affairs. It's not the end of the world. We can work through this if you just stop sulking." That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin of any lingering hope I had for reconciliation. Sulking. I nearly laughed, but it came out as a bitter, broken sound. You genuinely think I can just work through you screwing some random guy because I'm not exciting enough? You think I can look at you, touch you, share a bed with you, knowing you found round two with him so incredible? Her face finally fell, realizing she'd gone too far. But it was too late. The damage was done. My mind clicked. I was done with therapy, done with trying to understand, done with trying to salvage anything. There was no working on the marriage. This wasn't a crack, it was an implosion. I spent the next few days in a quiet, almost surgical detachment. I called a lawyer, a pit bull known for handling messy divorces, and scheduled an immediate consultation. I started meticulously documenting everything. Her spending habits, which were outrageous and mostly on herself, her sudden absences, the text message. I had taken a screenshot, thank God. I changed all the passwords to our joint accounts, quietly started moving my personal funds to a separate account, and even began researching the true value of her freelance business, which, surprise, surprise, was significantly inflated on our tax returns. I contacted a PI through a friend of a friend. I wanted proof, undeniable, irrefutable evidence of her infidelity, not just for the divorce proceedings, but for my own twisted sense of closure. I made a decision, cold and hard. This wasn't just about divorcing her. It was about ensuring she faced the consequences of her actions in a way that truly hurt her. She had shattered my life, my trust, my sense of self. I was going to make sure she understood the full, brutal impact of what she had done. The man who sat across from her at the dinner table, the man who had loved her unconditionally, was gone. In his place was someone driven by a need for justice, for balance, for an eye retribution. The gentle, predictable David was dead. A new, far more dangerous version had been born. The PI was a quiet, unassuming woman named Brenda. Irony was not lost on me, and she worked quickly and efficiently. Within a week, she had compiled a damning dossier. Photos, timestamps, hotel receipts, even a recording of Sarah telling Brenda's cousin Mark how pathetic and oblivious her husband was, and how she couldn't wait to be rid of him so they could be together permanently. The audacity, the sheer vileness of it all, was breathtaking. Hearing her voice, so full of contempt, describing me like some annoying insect, twisted something inside me even further. It cemented my resolve. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about utter disrespect and malice. With the evidence in hand, I blindsided her. I waited until the kids were safely off at college. I didn't want them caught in the crossfire just yet. One evening, after she'd come home from another client meeting, no doubt with Mark, I calmly placed a thick folder on the coffee table. She glanced at it, her expression a mix of curiosity and annoyance. "What's this, David? Another one of your budgets?" She scoffed, trying to sound superior. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice eerily calm. "This is a comprehensive overview of your extracurricular activities over the last 6 months, courtesy of a private investigator." Her face went white. She picked up the folder, her hands trembling, and opened it. Her eyes scanned the first few pages, the photos, the dates, the names. Her jaw dropped. She looked up at me, pure terror in her eyes, mixed with a dawning realization that her carefully constructed house of cards had just collapsed. You hired someone?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Every penny well spent," I replied, a chilling smile touching my lips. "Now, you have 2 choices. We can proceed with this divorce quietly, with you accepting a very modest settlement based on a fair division of assets, and I keep this file under wraps. Or, we can make this incredibly public. I submit this evidence to the court, the kids find out exactly what their mother has been up to, and you lose everything. And I mean everything." The control I felt in that moment was intoxicating, a powerful antidote to the helplessness I'd felt for so long. She finally understood. The game was over, and I held all the cards. The transformation in her was stark. The bitchiness, the arrogance, The dismissal, all gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed fear. She tried to cry, tried to beg, tried to say it was a mistake, that she still loved me, that Mark meant nothing. But it was too late. Her tears now held no power over me, only disgust. Every word that came out of her mouth sounded like a calculated lie, another attempt at manipulation. Please, David, don't do this. Think of our family, our reputation. She pleaded, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away as if she were diseased. Our family, our reputation? I scoffed. You destroyed our family, Sarah, the moment you opened your legs for another man. You shredded our reputation by making me a cuckold, a fool. You didn't think of our family when you were telling Mark how pathetic I was, did you? You didn't think of our reputation when you were sneaking around in cheap motels, did you? The raw truth of my words hit her hard, visibly shattering her. The confrontation quickly devolved into her alternating between frantic apologies and bitter accusations. She blamed me for driving her away, for not being exciting enough, for neglecting her. The classic cheater's playbook. But her words were hollow, lacking any real conviction, because she knew I had the evidence. She knew she was cornered. I simply presented my terms, cold and unyielding. The house would be sold, with the profits split. She would take her car and personal belongings. Her freelance business, which my PI had exposed as a shell company with almost no actual revenue, would not be factored into any significant settlement. Her infidelity, clearly documented, stripped her of any leverage she might have had. I made it clear that if she fought me, the evidence would go public, and her carefully curated image, her social standing, would be irrevocably destroyed. She would be left with nothing but shame. The look on her face as she finally grasped the gravity of her situation, the complete and utter demolition of her life as she knew it, was a brutal kind of satisfaction. It wasn't the kind of joy I expected, but it was a chilling, quiet victory after so much pain. By the way, if you're feeling the intensity of this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means the world. The divorce proceedings, despite my meticulous planning, were still agonizing. Every time I saw her across the courtroom, her usually immaculate appearance now slightly disheveled, her eyes holding a mix of fear and hatred, a fresh wave of resentment would wash over me. She tried every trick in the book, claiming emotional distress, trying to paint me as an abusive, controlling husband, even attempting to discredit the PI's evidence by calling it fabricated. But my lawyer was a beast, and the evidence was ironclad. Her attempts only solidified the judge's perception of her as manipulative and untrustworthy. I had meticulously tracked her spending, exposing how she'd siphoned off significant amounts from our joint accounts for business expenses that clearly went to support her affair, expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts for Mark. This, combined with the PI's findings, utterly annihilated her credibility. She had expected to walk away with a hefty settlement, to continue her lavish lifestyle without me. Instead, she was staring at barely enough to cover a small apartment and a beat-up car. The house was sold, the equity split fairly, but for her, fair was a pittance compared to what she felt entitled to. The kids, thankfully, were mostly spared the ugly details, at least initially. I told them simply that Sarah and I were divorcing due to irreconcilable differences and her desire for a different path in life. I didn't want to poison their view of their mother entirely, but I also made it clear that her choices led to this outcome. It broke my heart to see the confusion and sadness in their eyes, but I knew it was far better than allowing them to witness the full extent of her depravity. One day, when they're older, I'll tell them the full truth, but for now, they needed to focus on their futures, not on their mother's sordid past. Seeing her stripped of her entitlement, reduced to a shadow of her former self, felt like a brutal, cold justice. It wasn't happiness, but it was a quiet, grim satisfaction that she was finally facing the consequences of her disgusting actions. This wasn't revenge in a fiery explosion, but a slow, calculated dismantle of her world, brick by painful brick. The finalization of the divorce felt less like a celebration and more like the end of a very long, painful war. When the judge's gavel finally fell, I felt a strange mix of emptiness and relief. It wasn't the joyous freedom I'd imagined, but a quiet, profound peace. The weight, the constant gnawing anxiety, the poison of her lies, it had all been lifted. I walked out of that courthouse a single man, but more importantly, a man who had faced the deepest betrayal and emerged, bruised but whole, on the other side. The aftermath, though, was still raw. There were days, weeks even, where the memories would resurface, sharp and painful. The image of Brenda's cousin Mark's text, her dismissive shrug, the casual cruelty in her voice, they haunted my quiet moments. The house, once a home, felt empty and sterile after she left, even though I'd already begun redecorating. It was a physical manifestation of the void she'd left, but also an opportunity to build something new, something that was truly mine. I learned to cook for one, to enjoy evenings in silence, to find solace in my own company. My friends and family, who had seen the decline in my marriage long before I admitted it to myself, rallied around me. Their support was invaluable, a lifeline in the darkest days. They listened without judgment, offered comfort without pity, and helped me remember who I was before Sarah's toxic influence. I started going to the gym again, picking up old hobbies I'd let slide. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild my life, one small step at a time. The pain was still there, a phantom ache, but it no longer defined me. It became a scar, a reminder of a battle fought and won. I wasn't happy yet, not truly, but I was healing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for a future that didn't involve her, a future where I could truly be myself again. Now, a year and a half later, the dust has settled, and I'm living in a new place. The old house was sold, and I found a smaller, cozier place that truly feels like my home. It's filled with my things, my memories, and there's no trace of her or her deceit. I'm not dating yet, and honestly, the thought still makes me a little nauseous. The idea of trusting someone again, of opening myself up to that kind of vulnerability, feels miles away. But I'm working on it, slowly, with a therapist who has been instrumental in helping me process the trauma and rebuild my self-worth. The biggest lesson? Trust your gut. Seriously, Reddit. If something feels off, if your partner is suddenly secretive, dismissive, or just fundamentally different, don't ignore those red flags. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking you're paranoid or insecure. Your intuition is a powerful tool, and I regret not listening to mine sooner. I wasted too many months in denial, too many years sacrificing my own needs for someone who ultimately didn't deserve it. Another crucial takeaway: know your worth. Don't let anyone, especially a partner, chip away at your self-esteem until you're a shell of who you once were. My wife's contempt had slowly eroded my confidence, making me question my attractiveness, my intelligence, my very value as a human being. It took a lot of painful introspection to realize that her judgment of me was a reflection of her own character flaws, not mine. I am enough, and I deserve a partner who sees that. And finally, don't be afraid to fight for yourself. When you're wronged, especially in such a brutal, soul-crushing way, you have every right to seek justice. For me, that meant a brutal revenge that dismantled her life as she dismantled mine. For others, it might be different. But standing up for yourself, asserting your boundaries, and refusing to be a victim is paramount. It's not about being vindictive. It's about reclaiming your power and ensuring that those who hurt you face consequences. It's about showing yourself that you matter, that you're worth fighting for. The pain still echoes, but I'm stronger now, wiser, and ultimately free. My relationship with my kids has strengthened significantly since the divorce, surprisingly. They're both in their first year of college now, away from the immediate drama, which was a huge blessing. I made sure to stay connected, to be present, and to reassure them that my love for them was unconditional and unaffected by the divorce. I didn't trash talk their mother, sticking to the irreconcilable differences narrative, but I was also honest about the immense pain she had caused me. I think they sensed the shift in me, the renewed peace, and respected that I was taking care of myself. They both came home for Thanksgiving break recently, and it was the first time Sarah and I were in the same general vicinity since the final papers were signed. She showed up at my house to pick up some things she claimed were still hers and had been explicitly awarded to me in the settlement, trying to cause a scene. I had anticipated something like this, so I had my friend, a burly ex-bouncer, over at the house helping me with some chores. When she saw him, her usual bravado vanished. She tried to make small talk, asking about the kids, but I cut her off immediately. Sarah, your items are in a box on the porch. Anything else is no longer yours. Please leave. She bristled, attempting to regain some control. David, the kids are here. Don't you think you're being a little cold? You lost the right to dictate how I interact with you the moment you decided Brenda's cousin Mark was worth every risk, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Now, leave, or I will call the police for trespassing. The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of shock and fury. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She quickly grabbed the box and sped off. It felt good, really good. My kids saw it, saw her attempt to manipulate, and saw my unwavering resolve. Later, my son, usually quiet, pulled me aside. Dad, he said, I don't know the full story, but I'm proud of you. You stood your ground. That meant the world to me, more than any revenge. It showed me I was finally teaching them what healthy boundaries looked like, even if it was through a painful lesson. One of the most profound realizations I've had throughout this whole ordeal is how much of myself I had lost, slowly, subtly, over the years of being with Sarah. Her constant criticism, her demanding nature, her need to be the center of attention, it all chipped away at who I was. I became smaller, quieter, always trying to anticipate her moods, to avoid her wrath. I stopped pursuing my own interests, stopped seeing friends who she deemed boring, and generally faded into the background of my own life. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the slow, insidious erosion of my identity that hurt just as much. Now, though, I'm reclaiming it. I've started playing guitar again, something I loved in my youth but had put aside because Sarah thought it was childish and too loud. I've reconnected with old friends who were genuinely happy to see the real David resurface. I even took a solo trip to hike in the mountains, something I'd always wanted to do, but she always dismissed as too rugged or not luxurious enough. Standing on that mountaintop, breathing in the crisp air, looking out at the vast expanse, I felt a sense of freedom and authenticity I hadn't experienced in years. It was profoundly liberating. I'm also learning to redefine what happiness means to me. It's not about grand gestures or material possessions, things Sarah always valued. It's about quiet moments of contentment, a good book, a well-cooked meal, a laugh with a friend, the unconditional love of my kids. It's about self-respect and integrity. This journey has been brutal, but it has also been a crucible, burning away all the dross and leaving behind a stronger, truer version of myself. I'm no longer seeking validation from others, particularly not from a partner. My validation comes from within, from knowing I'm living an honest life on my own terms. The old David is truly gone, replaced by someone who understands resilience and the true cost of betrayal, but also the immense value of self-worth. All right, last time, folks. If you've stuck with me this long, you know the drill. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep stories like mine reaching those who need to hear them.